Right guys, welcome to this review of the new Warhammer 40,000 Supremacy Tactical Objective Cards. These have just came out from Games Workshop. I believe they're actually out tomorrow. I've managed to get my hands on them. And they're a little bit more expensive than the normal cards that you get for the relevant codexes and such. These come in at £10. First impression is they're in a very thin cardboard box, not like the rest of the objective cards that you get. They're in a nice kind of clamped down, quite firm box. This is a very thin box, as you can see, and you know, it's not very durable at all. So that's the first impression I get. When we go into the cards, I like that they are quite large format, and obviously these are Supremacy. The idea of these is that they are more difficult to achieve, but more rewarding when achieved. So the first thing I see about these is, like I said, they are the size of the normal sighted cards, which is great, nice and easy to see, but they are very thin. It's almost like paper compared to the sighted cards, which are quite firm card. These are very thin. They feel very low quality indeed, and I think the storage for them in this little cardboard box, really, you know, for the price that you pay, I'm instantly a little bit disappointed by them, if I'm honest. But that's the layout of them. That is, you know, the card that they're made from, and like I said, it's almost like paper. It's very thin indeed. So let's have a look anyway and see what the cards actually entail. And we'll do these in the sixes. So we've got the 60s first. Let's have a look at these. So this type of card is Annihilation, so I'm guessing it's all about destroying stuff. So we've got Decimate the enemy, score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if at least one enemy troop unit was completely destroyed in the tactical shooting phase. If at least one enemy unit was completely destroyed during the assault phase, score 2 instead. So that's leaning quite heavily towards the assault. This is the type of thing that the new Space Wolves would probably benefit from, as well as things like Blood Angels and the way there are playing Tyranids as well. Target enemy veterans, score 1 victory point if the elites were killed during the cyclical shooting phase, or 2 if it was destroyed in the assault phase. So it looks as though it's kind of going back towards the Eternal War objectives, like Big Guns Never Tire and such, but gearing it very much to the assault phase. Cripple the foe, score 1 victory point if at the end of your turn at least one enemy fast attack unit was completely destroyed, and again 2 points in the assault phase. Prioritized armored targets, so this is the heavy support one. Again 1 victory point in the cyclical shooting phase, 2 in the assault phase. Disrupt the command, which is destroy HQ units in shooting or cyclic phase. If at least one enemy HQ unit was completely destroyed during the assault phase of your turn, score D3 plus 2 victory points. That is, you know, that's big points right there. If a HQ unit was destroyed, it's going to make people think about, you know, not taking squishy HQs, I think, and forcing them to take bigger things. And this is the bigger card. The bigger they are, score 3 victory points at the end of your turn if at least one enemy Lord of War unit was completely destroyed during either their cyclical shooting phase. If at least one enemy Lord of War unit was completely destroyed during the assault phase, score D3 plus 3 victory points. That is handy because I know a lot of people argue over the scoring victory points for hull points and wounds on Lords of War over the old escalation rules, I think it was. With the amount of Lords of War in games now, this is a big scorer. I think things like Big Game Hunter scores you D3 victory points if you kill a Super Heavy or Gargantuan, which I know it's a Super Heavy or Gargantuan, but the majority of those are Lords of War. Obviously you've got things like Dante, Marnius Calgar, and obviously other units like that as well. I mean Imatech as well. This is basically upping the game of what, you know, it's going along with the amount of Lords of War and everything that's now in the game. but massive rewards on them. So it looks as though those cards are more geared to the assault phase, but going back to sort of the 6th edition missions of the Eternal War missions, so I like these. It makes a new way to play, especially with opponents up in the game and taking a lot more choices, in particular the Lords of War. So let's have a look at the 50s. So 51, cleanse and burn. Roll a d6 when this tactical objective is generated. Score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if there are no enemy units within 3 inches of the objective marker whose number corresponds to the result. If there are no enemies within 9 inches of the marker, score d3. That's quite interesting, because rather than just being very close knit, you have to you know, try and spread out further, do more damage. If there's a unit 5 inches away from an objective, you may not normally go for it. This is forcing you to think about it. Do you take the chance to then destroy the second unit, or go for that second unit that you wouldn't normally go for, in exchange for getting D3 victory points instead? So it's very high risk but high reward. Drive them back. Score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if at least one enemy unit that was controlling an objective marker at the start of your turn was completely destroyed. In addition, one of your units is controlling the objective marker at the end of your turn, score D3. So that kind of insinuates that yes, you can shoot them off the objective from a long distance, but if you can also get onto the objective, you score in D3. So again, you know, there's a way to score the normal point, but it's, do you take the risk and, for example, chuck your Eldar jet bikes to that objective marker that was in the middle of the board, that you know, the Wraith Knight or the Warp Hunt has just blown some enemy models off. So again, you know, high risk, but again adding extra rewards to go in that little step further. No mercy. At the score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if at least one enemy unit was completely destroyed during either your shooting or your assault phase. If at least one enemy unit was completely destroyed during both your shooting and your assault phase, score D3. If at least 3 enemy units were completely destroyed in both your shooting phase and your assault phase, score D3 plus 3 instead. That is actually a Dark Eldar card anyway. You know, being a Dark Eldar player, I love when that card comes out. You know, because it's more than possible with Dark Eldar having a very nice balance of you know, mass firepower and good close combat units as well. So again, that's forcing you not just to shoot enemies or not just charge them. If you can kill 3 in 2 different phases, you know, that's a minimum of 4 victory points there straight away. Primary target, score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if at least one enemy model that had 3 or more wounds or hull points remaining at the start of the assault phase was removed as a casualty or during that phase. If the model had 5 or more wounds or hull points remaining at the start of the assault phase, score D3 instead. I think the hull points one, it's not hard to charge a tank and bring a tank down in combat, particularly like Furious Charge on the Blood Angels. It's not that difficult, but again, it's kind of inspiring you to go after those bigger targets, go for larger things that are on the board to get the extra victory points. And if there's something with 5 hull points, you know, charge your Imperial Knight at a super heavy. Do you know what I mean? The Imperial Knight's probably going to be able to bring something down in the assault phase. You've got other things that could probably do it as well. For example, the Mechanic Mercer Axe that I have. Yeah, so that's if it's destroyed as well. So you could technically get very lucky and get an explodes result doing the 5 hull points of damage as well. Let them bleed. Score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if at least one enemy model was removed as a casualty from at least 3 different enemy units during your turn. If at least one model was removed as a casualty from 6 or more, score D3 instead. Again, this is another Dark Eldar one, but I think the Dark Eldar one, without looking, I can't double check it, but I believe the Dark Eldar one actually rewards you for more victory points than this. I think it might be D3 plus 3. But again, it's causing you, you know, not just to focus on one, but to try and remove models from multiple units, again, a new way of playing. So instead of like overwhelming firepower and just targeting everything at one unit, you know, you've got to pick off models from each unit. That is one of the cards I do like about the Dark Eldar ones as well, and why I normally favour using them if I use an Elf Alliance. Area control. Score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if there are no enemy units within 6 inches of the centre of the battlefield. If there are no enemy units within 12 inches of the centre of the battlefield, score D3 instead. That's sneaky, because I know some people like the objective markers in the middle of the battlefield, but again, that's kind of almost king of the hill with a 7th objective marker slap bang in the centre of the table. That's game changing. That changes, you know, everything about the having the 6 objectives there. That one is very interesting indeed. The only thing with that one I find is a lot of people will tend to put tanks or Death Stars in the middle of the table to either absorb firepower or chase people off. So that one is going to be very, very interesting to play indeed. So let's have a look at the 40s. I'm wondering if the 10s, 20s and 30s are just secure objective X numbers. Right, so 41. Careful timing. Score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if you control the objective marker whose number corresponds to the current turn number. That's a Harlequin card. I'm pretty sure it is. You know, that's quite random. As it says, careful timing. It's all about when you draw this card as to whether or not you would actually score that. Adaptive strategy. When this tactical objective is generated, roll 2 dice, re-rolling any doubles. Score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if you control either of the objective markers whose number corresponds to the result. If you control both of these at the end of your turn, score D3. I'm pretty sure there's an Eldar one that is for 1 of those, and I think there's a Blood Angel one where you have to nominate a character and an objective marker, and you score D3. So again, that one's quite interesting as well, because it's not forcing you to go after one. It divide your forces and go after 2 separate objective markers. Do you split your army up to go and get that second objective marker? Is it worth the risk to potentially get an extra 2 victory points? So again, all of these cards so far are about taking extra risks and forcing you to play the game differently. So far I like the objectives on the cards, definitely. It's just a shame about the quality of them, but it would be very, very interesting to use these. And to be honest, the first game I use them with, I think, is going to be my Dark Eldar, because I feel like they've got the manoeuvrability to be able to do damage to, you know, units on multiple objectives, and they've got the speed to control the board. So I'm actually really looking forward to using these. Priority orders received. When this tactical objective is generated, roll a d6. Score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if you control the corresponding objective marker. If your Warlord controls the objective marker, score d3 instead. So that's kind of similar to the first one there, and like I said, that Eldar one. And it's almost like having the Warlord trait from the rulebook that allows your Warlord to score an extra victory point for controlling the objective. So again, that's forcing you not to charge your Warlord necessarily forward. Do you hold him back to potentially score the extra victory points? So yeah, these are very interesting. Control the field. Score D3 points at the end of your turn if you control at least 2 even numbered objective markers. So again, forcing you to split up. Score D3 victory points at the end of your turn if you control at least 2 odd numbered, so you know that's the same one there. Command the field. Score D3 plus 2 victory points at the end of your turn if you control at least 2 even numbered objective markers and 2 odd numbered. That one is very difficult, so it's not about controlling the number of objective markers, it's about controlling 2 of each rather than just going, you know, for any 4 like with Supremacy, and controlling more than your opponent. That one, I think, you know, that's bordering on domination, but you can't just go after every objective. You've got to think, you know, which one can you not get out of the odds? Which ones can you not get out of the evens? So that one is quite interesting. I do like those cards as well. So we're down to the 30s, and it looks as though the 30s... oh, actually, I've just noticed the names of them. Storm Objective 6. Score D3 victory points at the end of your turn if Objective 6 marker was controlled by your opponent at the start of your turn and you controlled it at the end of your turn. And that is the same for each of them. So that's kind of similar to the ones there that we've just discussed with, you know, taking the ground. That's interesting. So it's not about just controlling the objective, it's about chasing your opponent off one and taking it. I think there's a Tau one very similar to that, and I think maybe one of the Space Marine ones as well. But these are interesting. Rather than just securing Objective 6, so rather than just you know, jumping some units on there and overriding your opponent, you've got to physically chase them off. Yeah, that's very interesting indeed. It's going to force you to play very differently, rather than just, you know, destroying the units and then moving something onto it. Well, in fact, that's exactly what you're doing there. But yeah, definitely like these a lot so far. The 20s, defend objective. Score 2 victory points if you control objective marker 6 with the same unit at the end of 2 of your turns consecutively. Again, I think there's a Dark Angel one like that. So it looks as though these are very inspired from a lot of the other card decks, but generalized in order to use with any army. And it's very high risk, high reward. So again, with this, do you want to move your units off that objective? It's worth 2 victory points rather than just the 1. So, you know, is it worth holding, you know, that assault squad back on that objective marker? Do you think they can hold that objective marker without being destroyed in your opponent's next turn? They are very, you know, you've really got to think about what your game plan is, and what you're playing with. It would be interesting to see whether or not this forces you to build your armies any differently, actually. And there we go, we're down to the 10s now. So these are just basic secure objective number X. Score 1 victory point at the end of your turn if you control that objective marker. So that is the typical ones that we are used to, and it looks as though that goes right the way down to those. So yeah, that is the cards. There's a little kind of overview here as well. Supremacy Tactical Objectives. This deck contains 36 new tactical objectives for use in games of Warhammer 40,000. If you are playing a mission with the Tactical Objective special rule, you can choose to generate your objectives using this deck instead of rolling on the table in the 40k rulebook. If you do so, your opponent does not have to do the same. They can choose which set of objectives to use. Many of the tactical objectives you will find on these cards are more difficult to achieve than those found in the Warhammer 40,000 rules, but offer greater rewards. Choose wisely. If your faction has its own set of tactical objectives, you can combine them with this set in the same way that you would combine them with those in the Warhammer 40,000 rules. If you generate a capture and control objective, for example 11 to 16, simply generate the corresponding tactical objective from your faction's codex instead. Right, so that's why they've left those ones, you know, 11 through to 16, so you can still take the specific ones. To be honest, I think with Dark Eldar, you know, me being quite a favoured Dark Eldar player, I'd be very, very tempted to take those 6 Dark Eldar cards, because a lot of the cards that are in this deck are very, very similar to the Dark Eldar ones anyway. So the fact that you can add those 6 in, which is essentially what the faction objective cards are, gives you that extra 6. Adding the extra 6 into these, that is going to be, you know, there's going to be a lot of points to be able to be scored between them. So that is it, that is the cards. Let me know what your thoughts are. Would you play these regular? Would you risk going for the extra points, or would you play it safe? The only thing that I don't like about these is the quality of the card. It's very, very thin, and I especially don't like this box. It's going to be quite easy to damage, whereas the hard cases of the faction specific cards are very durable, being made of hard cardboard, and I think the price is a little bit steep for what you get. At the end of the day, it's just a tactical objective card book, deck even. At least for the faction ones, you get, you know, the psychic cards or the doctrines and stuff as well. So the fact that these are £10, whereas the faction ones are £8, I don't agree with the pricing, but the cards are phenomenal, and I think the next time my Dark Eldar come out to play, I'm going to have to use these. So, thank you very much for watching. Please let me know what you think of the cards, and yeah, they're very interesting indeed. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.